What's happening, everyone? True Evil here, and today I am putting out my tier list for Etheria Restart. Now, this tier list will be a little bit different than a lot of tier lists I will be seeing because I'm going to go into specific detail about each character, as well as talk about all the pros and cons of these characters. As someone who was one of the highest rated players in both PvP and PvE, I was able to see a lot of things in the final test, and I just want to talk about like why I think characters stack up the way they do. And because of that, S tier is going to be sort of reserved as characters that define the meta. Everything sort of goes around them. A tier is going to be the meta. You know, B is going to be like they are worth investing. They're definitely good characters, but they have specific roles, and C and D tier are, C will have like characters that are like very specific at doing one thing, but then are not good at others and are completely outclassed. Then D, I'm just going to say D are bad characters. So without further ado, let's get in on it. Now, the first character I'm going to talk about in this tier list is going to be Khloros. And I am putting him as a meta character because what he does best, he is arguably the best at, which is single target damage. If you don't know why he deals so much damage, it is because of his ultimate, which basically does a bazillion damage. I believe at 114 it does 400% damage, and it does more and more the more you do it. And he gets this sort of mini game going with his ultimate where there is a 10 clock, and once you hit the enemy that is doom told 10 times, Khloros follows up with an ultimate. Now, this means that you can really exploit this with characters that have multi-hit like Rosa, Heinrich. Freya's ultimate has a 4 attack. There's a lot of different ways to just make Khloros do a bazillion damage. So this means that he's one of the best units for the guild boss, as well as Phantom Theater and bosses where it's just like one giant damage sponge that you need to do a lot of damage to. Like an example of this was Dahlia in Anisync Echoes, and he is good on Terramaton. And I saw that some people say he's bad in PvP, which is just not true. If you fully upgrade his skill 3, what that does is basically when an enemy dies, the Doom Toll follow up goes to a different enemy, which means he can sometimes proc multiple ultimates, and he can absolutely obliterate in PvP. And the good thing about having him as an option is he is sort of like a rogue pick in PvP. So that way, if someone picks like your Heinrich and your Tiamat and other super meta defining units in PvP, you have a DPS ready to go. And they're not thinking about Khloros at the back of their head, so they might be scared. So, they could ban him just because they're afraid, which is really nice. Also, his skill 1 has a chance of cooldown reduction, and his skill 2 is a little mid unless if you invest in it. I don't really think you should invest into it, but what it does, it makes him do more damage to the enemy it targets, as well as does a damage reduction. So if you fully upgrade that, it's like, I think it lasts for 3 turns. It's absolutely amazing. But I just don't think there's enough lattices in this game to worth investing in. But I do think upgrading his skill 3 up to 4 or 5 is definitely the way to go if you really enjoy this character. Now, the next character we're going to talk about is a meta-defining unit, which is Marvell. And he is definitely meta-defining because he was used in probably 95% of all gameplay after the first 2 days. And that is for good reason. His ultimate skill 3, which I think you should always fully upgrade, unless if he gets nerfed too hard and he's not usable anymore on the official launch. We'll know on the balance patch. But his ultimate gave speed down, resistance down, and pushed back the turn meter, which was absolutely broken in PvP if he was able to act first. It was pretty much GG those first couple of days because we don't have like the resistance and bulwark and all those things yet. As well as just like in PvE content, if you tied him with like Kraken and Freya and Kloss and other characters like that, you were essentially able to cheese a lot of these really hard in-game boss fights into making it so the boss just never had a turn. And absolutely broken. He was just a meta-defining unit. Now, I do think he has two problems. One, he really needs his skill 1 maxed out, and that isn't really a con per se, but what happens is even though skill 3, skill 1, skill 1, skill 1, skill 3, and looping that can cheese fights, he's not going to be able to do like continuous fights like that. So if you have to rely on him to do that, it's not going to work out, because what happens in continuous is he's going to use his skill 3 and then he uses his skill 2, which is a silence. And that's not why he's good, right? Like, yeah, the silence can be really good in PvP, and yeah, it can CC in Doki, but the thing is like, you kind of just want to go infinite turns, and this can stop an infinite turn loop. So if your characters are weak, they will get crushed if you have to rely heavily on the turn pushback. And then the other con I would say of Marvell is that some enemies don't get pushed back by turn meters, some don't get affected by Marvell, and if you are really using him as a crutch on a lot of the content, once you get to content where he doesn't work, you might be completely cooked. So I do recommend to really work on having a solid team comp of diversity units and not just rely on the Marvell cheese, even though it's really good cheese. Now, the next character I'm going to talk about is the best rare unit in the game, which is number 41. Definitely putting at B tier, and that is because of her ultimate. What her ultimate does is boosts turn meter by 35% and has a cooldown of 3. And I'm not even going to talk about lattices because, yeah, that's what it is at fully upgraded. But the thing is because she's a rare unit, her lattices are the easiest to acquire in the game. And you can max this skill out on day 2 without worrying about your SRs or your SSRs getting like losing their upgrade mats. This is a character that's super cheap to build, and because it's a rare, requires way less prowess upgrade materials than the other characters. And she has a pseudo, like, it's a heal but only targets one person on her skill 2. She has a wound, but that turn meter 35% and attack up every 3 turns is absolutely brutal, and you can set up some amazing combos. She's great in PvE content. She's amazing in PvP. The only downside of her is her speed is I think it might actually be the slowest speed in the game, which is 105. And that means I would recommend upgrading her skill 1 up to 4, just so you're able to get those extra speed nodes, just so she's got a little bit of run. But that's the only con. And if she had a speed of like 110, I would 100% put her in A tier. She's one of those great characters in a game where you need 8 or 10 characters for a full roster to do all the content at level 40 and up and do RTA, PvP, and definitely a character everyone should build on their account in the first month or 2. Speaking of characters everyone should level up on their account, I am going to start talking about Gray. And, I wasn't a believer at Gray at first. I thought I could make my account without him. And then in the last 4 days of the beta, I became Team Gray. I leveled him up. I maxed out all his lattices. And let me tell you, 100% worth it. He's great in PvP. He's got that nice cleave. He gives defense down. He gives your entire team crit rate up. He is doing a ton of work, and he's a great pair with so many characters. He's the best pair with Mocha for Doki Doki Threshold. He's really great in Terramatan. He's really great in so much content in PvE, and in PvP he was decimating. On my final day of PvP trying to push into that guaranteed top 16 of the final test, almost every time people were picking Gray 4th, 3rd pick, just because they saw how insane my Gray was, so then they picked their Gray too. And I was just seeing how other people's Grays were, and I'm just like, dang, is this actually an SR? And the only con of him is that he does require significant lattices to pop off. And that means that he needs his skill 2 and skill 3 fully maxed out, because what that will do is he gives everyone crit rate, and then he does the ultimate, then he does a basic attack, and then he just keeps on that loop. And the skill 1, I'm going to say, is as much as you want to. At maximum, it does give a 25% turn meter, and I'm not going to say that only if it crits, because at the end game he's always going to crit, right? So yeah, I total meta unit. Everyone should build him. He's great in all content of the game. There's just no reason to ignore him in that first month or two. And if you do, you know, you might be having a bad time. Now, the other best DPS in the SR bracket, I would say, is Victor, who I'm going to put Victor above Gray, and that is just because he is arguably the best single target DPS in the game. It's like absolutely brutal. My first experience with Victor was they picked him like fourth or fifth pick in PvP, and like I saw some people talk about it in one of my discords, and I saw him like do one of the fastest clears in Terror, and I was just like, whatever. And then all of a sudden, this Victor just no buffs just hits my Tiamat who has 70k HP or something like that, and one shots her, and I'm just like, what? What just happened? You know, this guy does amazing damage. The only con, though, is that he does require a lot of lattices, and I would say he needs 4 on skill 1 to get that maximum damage, skill 2 all the way maxed out, and skill 3 with the 4. So that's basically like you're just maxing everything that does the damage, because that's all he does. He goes to town. Now, that is also sort of a con, but you know, he's just raw damage, and he does it amazingly. And he has built in like resistance. He makes a shield with his ultimate, and you know, he's just gonna scale harder than like almost anything. It's absolutely brutal, especially paired with a Lily. There is almost nothing scarier than someone getting that first or second pick Lily into like a fourth pick Victor. I'm just like, ooh. So yeah, everyone should build him. Now, it's going to really depend on other units whether or not you're going to build him the very first week or the second week, but you're definitely going to be building this guy. And it's just a matter of, do I want to fully commit to Gray first, or do I want to fully commit to Victor first? You know, that choice is going to be up to you. I'm personally going to level up my Gray first, but you know, Victor's not too far behind. Now, a lot of people have been talking about Tsuki, and you know, they've been putting her at tier 0 and things, and what we need to realize on these tier lists and like other things is like I'm seeing like on a lot of like test servers and things, they're like looking at characters with fully maxed skills, and with Tsuki you have to understand that she is not going to be a maxed out character, and she's not going to be your first, she's not going to be your second maxed out character either, because you're going to be wanting to fully develop your DPSs, you want to fully develop Lily, there's a lot of other things you want to do before building into Tsuki. And you know, is Tsuki a meta character? Absolutely, no question. She gives attack up, speed up, and with her skill 3 boosted, it does a whole lot more, like that increased 35% turn meter, and you really want it to be maxed out on the skill 3. I would say minimum you want to have 2 points in it for that 35% turn meter. That's when it really starts getting insane, but you want to have it maxed out. And the reason for that is because you use that, then you use the skill 2, which applies a silence and a cooldown reduction, and that makes it so you have basically like that permanent attack up and speed up using her. And another great thing with Tsuki is she's defense based, so she can fully utilize Artisan and give those defensive shields, and she's super tanky. Her skill 1 makes it so one of your highest DPSs gets boosted in the turn meter. Just like a lot of speed and turn manipulation. Really great character. But the problem with her is like she's just like a different Lily, but Lily's better than her. And also like there's just not going to, she needs lattices, and lattices are too hard to get in this game. So like, yeah, she's really great. She's going to be a meta character, and you definitely want her on your roster for sure. But like, there's just not enough lattices to like really go to town on her at the beginning. So even though she is amazing, she's not going to be full potential, at least in the first month. And then on the second month, most likely the characters that are the accounts that built her are going to be Giga Whales. Now, in the beta, I did see a couple of Tsukis in the top brackets, and they were scary. I'm not gonna lie. Like, this is an amazing character. She is great, but the problem is like her value in PvE content is going to be sort of deterred until we have more lattices. So just in that, I'm not going to say she's meta defining. She's definitely not tier 0, but she is meta. And I'm going to put her at the top of the meta list just because she's also the hottest waifu in this video game. Now, the next character I want to talk about on this list is Asshu, who I'm going to put at C. And that is because of his silence AoE in skill 3. Now, I don't recommend putting any lattices into him, but like at the beginning of the game, his basic attack gives speed down, which is relevant. He has 2 AoE attacks. His skill 2 does a dot, and his skill 3 gives a silence. And the silence is going to be helpful because, let's face it, not everyone's going to pull Tsuki SSR, and everyone's going to have an Asshu. So that means everyone's going to have a AoE silence, which counts as a CC. So in Doki Doki, although you will have Kazuyo no matter what if you use your selector that you get at level 10 for her, but you'll also have Asshu. So you'll have 2 CCs to just basically guarantee that there is a CC on the Doki Doki enemies at all time at the beginning of the game. And anytime you need silence, you just put them in. I don't recommend leveling them, but it's nice to know he has a specific function, and as being a green character and most of the things that you do want to silence are blue, it's really nice to get that extra effect accuracy. But yeah, that is what it is. At least he has a use, which is more than I can say for some of the other rares. Speaking of rares that have no uses, I'm going to go to Blue Andrew, which I'm putting in D tier because a lot of people have been talking and they're like, yeah, bro, Blue Andrew is going to be like one of the best characters to level day 1 on launch. Trust me, bro. And like, these are really like, they were really high ranked people who were saying this. So I was just like, dang, how good is this Blue Andrew? So what I did on the last day was I was trying to like use characters that I didn't have built and push all the content and just see things. And I was just like, I really don't see it. Like, yeah, he gets that damage reduction. Yeah, he gets, like, he has that AoE, but, like, I just don't think he's that great. Like, people were really talking about that. And the thing is I'm going to be spending those arena tickets to level my number 41. And I just don't want to use too many arena tickets because, I am saving for those gold lattices and those purple lattices. I just don't want to waste resources on a rare that I just don't think is worth it. And Andrew is definitely one of those characters, unfortunately. Now, let's talk about another S tier character for a second, and let's go with Rosa, who I don't think is meta defining as Marvell was. She'll probably be better than him if, Marvell gets nerfed pretty hard in the balance patch before the launch of the game, but maybe even Rosa might get bounced. I don't know. Rosa just came clear winner as the best blue DPS in the game. She has an insane ultimate. She does sort of the same thing as Gray does, where everyone has that crit rate up, but instead of doing a defense down with Gray, she does a speed down, as well as she has this like unique debuff that makes her do more damage. And she dishes it out. She has an amazing follow-up attack. I really highly recommend leveling her skill 2 all the way, and then she's one of those characters where you just want to level everything to maximum. I'm going to be using her for my selector. She's the best DPS for Aurora. She's the second best DPS for Doki Doki. She has so many practical uses. She pairs with a ton of other characters. Great for Union Boss, great for Phantom Theater, great for PvP. She's just pretty much great in like literally everything in the game. So like definitely meta defining, amazing character. I could sit here and glaze her all day, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Now, another character that is a blue, sort of a DPS, not really a DPS, more of a despeller debuffer, is Viper. And I'm going to put Viper in B. I honestly think he's going to end up at the end of A by the first month, and definitely going to be above number 41 after the first month. But I think right now, just for those first upcoming weeks, I'm going to say he's low B. And that is because of, in PvE, his main application is being a D-speller for the Aurora module boss. Um, Heinrich is better, but he is a light and dark SSR, so it's not going to be guaranteed that everyone's going to have him. And the reason why Viper is much better for that than Obel is because his D-spell is tied to his skill 3, which means in continuous play, Viper is just always going to be using his D-spell, unlike Obel, who's going to pretty much require manual play on those highest difficulties. So not only is that great, but what Viper does is with his skill 2 passive is he gets like a damage reduction for the team if they get hit with a critical. And once that is fully maxed out, it basically negates the entire critical hit extra damage, except I believe the critical hit will just do 5% more damage. I forgot exactly how I mathed it out, but it's a super big pick, and it's going to be huge in PvP, especially if people are picking Rosa a lot, and he's going to pair extremely well in PvP with like Rahu, Viper, Lingluo, Sania. Teams like that are really going to be annoying with these stall teams after the first month. So he's definitely not a priority unit. He's worth investing into, and he's definitely going to become a meta unit eventually, just because of how amazing his kit is and how the counterattacking works. He requires a lot of lattices, and I've been saying this a lot, but there isn't a whole lot of lattices in this game. So, like, he has to be on the back burner for now. I would recommend at first just going 115 just to get that D-spell if you don't have Heinrich, and then eventually build him up into the insane unit that he is. But unfortunately, back burner for now. Worth investing though, for sure. Now, the next character I want to talk about is, I'm going to rate this character really low because this character only has one specific thing that she does the best at, and then she's really bad at pretty much everything else. And that is Kazuyo the Reverie, who, even though I do highly recommend upgrading her skill 3 all the way by the time you get to like level between 35 and 40 so you can farm Doki Doki, that's pretty much her only use. You're only going to be really seeing her for that because Slumber is arguably one of the worst CCs in the game, just because what it does, if you knock them out of sleep, you get that 25% damage increase, and she does give that attack down, but like, honestly, I think her kit is underwhelming. Sleep is just not as good as like Kraken or like Marvell or Lilith. There's just so many better CC units than her, but she does have that one use, and she is the best at it. So just because of that, I'm saying C tier. She is a one-trick pony, even though she is the best at that one trick. So, it is what it is, which is unfortunate because I do dig her style and I wish she was better in more of the content. Now let's talk about the best character in the video game, who is Lily. Now, Lily is the best character in this game because of so many things, but basically all you need to know is of Twin Trick, which is her unique, where she pairs herself with the best DPS, and once her skill 1 is fully upgraded, it gives a 100% follow-up attack with that DPS. Her skills makes it so the Twin Tricked character can get that cooldown reduction. Her ultimate makes it so everyone on the opposing team's cooldown goes up. She gives that speed up. There's just so many things in Lily's kit that just really pushes her to being the best character in the game. And not only is her kit absolutely broken, but her innate speed is 117, which is it's too high for what she is. And she's definitely the best reroll target in the game. She excels in all aspects of PvE and PvP, and she's just meta defining, and she is really scary, especially if your account doesn't have a Lily. So that means they can freely pick Lily at all times, and it was really hard in RTA, especially when you're in that top 50, because, you know, if you play the same guy 5 or 6 times because you're the only two people in that elo bracket playing at a time, sometimes they figure out that you don't have a Lily on your account, and that means you're going to start going on a losing streak because they realize they can wait till 4th or 5th pick to pick her, and, you know, it's a struggle out there. So, yeah, I would say Lily is the best character in the game. Always max out her skill 1 first, and then I would make it a priority to level those things later after your DPSs, but, you know, she is everything, you know. Definitely the best meta defining thing in this game. Now, let's talk about another character that's going to be really good in that mid game, and that is Dinah. I'm going to say Dinah is in this weird spot where she's definitely like, she's worth investing up to being that 5-star level 45 character, but I don't think you should invest in her prowesses that much. You can max her skill 3 if you want. So I am going to put her in B tier at the bottom below Viper because she's the best at doing these super fast speed clears because of her buff or debuff erosion, which basically means that a character like Rosa can really go to town on these enemies. And, you know, she's just going to make it so you're doing a bazillion damage. Now, the reason I'm putting her in B and not like an A tier meta unit is because she's not that great in PvP in my opinion, as well as like a lot of those Inferno difficulties, the enemies are going to need to be despelled, and you're going to put that despeller in the debuff slot. But like when you're trying to farm those like Hell 3, Hell 4 Terra Matons and like everything before then, she's absolutely brutal in a lot of the content, especially the shell bosses that can be debuffed. You know, she goes to town. Unfortunately, some of the other PvE content makes it so you can't apply debuffs, so she's not going to shine there. So like, she's not shining in PvP, she's not shining in all aspects of PvE, but when she shines, you know, she feels amazing. So not worth prowesses, but definitely worth having as a character if you're trying to do those sub 30-second speed clears. Now, a character I saw a lot of people glazing in the beta, who I can't see it, is Diting. Now, the reason why everyone loves him is because he has those cat ears, but the thing is he's a dark single target DPS unit like Victor, except Victor just does everything he does, but better. So for that reason, I'm putting him at C tier at the bottom, because it's just like, why would I heavily invest in this SR when there's another SR of the same type who does his job, but better? You know, Victor has more survivability than Diting. Diting is extremely fragile. I just really don't understand why you wouldn't just level Victor. And the reason actually is I do know why. It's because of the cat ears. So, you know, this is a pick. You know, you're going like, do you like cat ears, bro, or do you like bro with the shovel? And for me, I'm all about that shovel knight, so we're definitely leveling Victor and putting Diting in the trash. And that's all I want to talk about with Diting. Now, another character that I really don't like and I think is useless, which a lot of people aren't going to agree with me, just like they're not going to agree with that Diting rank, is Borgne, who I'm going to put him at the top of C, because, you know, all he does is a big ult. That's literally all he does. And like, yeah, it does a ton of damage, but you know, if that one shot isn't good enough, he's pretty mid. And his flaw is actually like one of the biggest flaws in like all of team comp, which is he can't crit. So that means he is like horrible in terms of like trying to build that initial team composition of 8 to 9 characters, because, you know, like, he's not going to pair with Rosa and Gray with that additional crit chance up. He's not going to pair with Dinah, because Dinah needs like you to crit to fully get the erosion effect. He's not going to pair well with Heinrich because of Heinrich's last words improves crit damage. It's just like there's so many of like these meta characters that really revolve around crits, and you know, he just can't do it. And you know, that means he's not going to pair with like the super defining meta characters. I just don't want to invest into a character that's not going to work with the rest of the team because it's going to make team compositions awkward. There's just better options for him. So, for that regard, he's C tier. I'm sorry, everyone. I know you all love the Borgne. Now, on this next character, I don't know if I should put him as a meta-defining character as meta. I'm going to put him at the end of the meta-defining for now, and that is Heinrich. And the reason he is meta-defining is because in those infernal PvE modules, you need that D-spell. He's got it. And in PvP, that skill 3 is absolutely brutal, especially with their buffs, and his skill 2 applies wound. And, he's laying down the noise, lots of damage. But the thing is like, he's not great in all aspects of PvE content. And, if you're just like using him without a fully upgraded skill 3, he's just gonna feel kind of mid. And, he's one of those characters you need to really invest in to really feel like, wow, I just got an awesome dark unit. Because without upgrades, he's Midrick, but definitely needed for a lot of the in-game aspects of PvE, and definitely a great choice in PvP. So I'm putting him at meta-defining for now. But the thing is like, when he's bad, he's really bad. I'm just gonna leave it there. Now, the next character, some people will say is a tier 0 character. I'm going to say he's meta. I'm going to put him below. Actually, I do think he's just like the meta as it comes because his CC is like absolutely brutal. You've probably seen Kraken CC paired with Marvell. Marvell followed up by Kraken can pretty much make any team composition never get a turn before you end them. This is an especially great way to cheese a lot of things in Ember Trek and Antisync Echoes. Kraken just has so many uses with his CC freeze. He's the second best choice, I would say, for Doki Doki farming at the end game. He's just really meta. It's like absolutely atrocious how good this CC is. It's, I could just sit here and say the CC is great. I think his skill 3 needs to be maxed out because the cooldown is a little too big with that 5 cooldown. Needs to be 4. Sometimes you can use something like Star to make it 3, and that's nice. And then his skill 1, I would upgrade it to 4 for that additional speed because you always want him acting first and applying that CC. Now, one thing I will note is I did see a lot of people do this mistake, which, I really hope you don't do, but a lot of people were using his skill 3 and then following up with a skill 2 on like a frozen enemy. And that's just like not how you use his skill 2 in my opinion. You apply the skill 3, and if anyone gets unthawed by the frozenness, then you hit them with the skill 2. And you try to do that on a certain enemy to just perma-freeze them. And using Marvel skill 1 along with all these things, you can usually loop one character into never having a turn. So yeah, amazing CC, amazing unit. Everyone should probably build them. But the thing is this unit might get nerfed a little from the balance patch just because of how like oppressive this CC is. Speaking of oppressive CC, let's go on to Lilith. And Lilith, it's hard for me to say where she is because she is arguably the best CC in the game. Honestly, I would say she is the best CC in the game. And, I do think in PvP she's just like an absolute monster. When she shines in PvE, she really shines, but, there's certain bosses that can't be stunned, so she's not that great into it. But, when she works, she works. So, I'm going to put her at the end of meta-defining just because not everyone was able to invest into her because there was only like that 10 days in the beta. But, she's absolutely brutal. In the first month, I do expect people to start using lattices to make her the crazy machine she is. You can do a lot of CC PvP teams, like you can do Lilith, Kraken, Mia, Marvell, or something along those lines to just infinitely CC them. Best stunner in the game. That's all you need to know. Now, the next character I'm going to talk about is Tiamat. And, Tiamat is a weird character because she's one of the best PvP units, so I do want to say she's meta defining there. But in PvE, even though she's really good in those early game, mid games, once you hit level 35, she feels really mid compared to a lot of other options. And her AI for continuous is just like not the best because certain times you just want her to use skill 1 or skill 2, but she's always going to use the skill 3, and that can end up with Tiamat just dying. So like it's going to take forever too to do PvE content with her, and there's almost always a better option in PvE than Tiamat. So she's going to fall off significantly there, but she is one of the defining units of PvP, so it's really hard for where I would place her. She is meta. She's not meta defining in PvE where she is in PvP, and I think because of all those reasons, I'm going to put her at the top of A because she is meta. She is great, but like she just is underwhelming in late game PvE. And the worst thing is that like if you rely on her too early in the game, like on those first 3 days when your max stamina refreshing, once you hit like level 35, level 40, and you've only been using Tiamat, you're going to brick your account most likely because you're going to realize that Tiamat sucks in PvE. And she does have amazing combos. There is that shell that revives her and ices her. There's Sania who boosts her health, and she is pretty easy to build since you just need to build HP basically. So like this is where I'm placing her, and you can disagree with me and say she's meta defining, but I just think she's the top of the meta because it's like she's a 10 out of 10 in this one category, and she's also like a 6 out of 10 in the other category. So I think measuring it out to an 8 out of 10 overall says top of A tier for me. Now, we just talked about Tiamat, and her best sort of combo is with Sania. Sonia's ultimate gives her that extra 20% max HP, and it is a revive. And the thing is like, I want to say that Sania is meta, but I'm actually going to put Sania above Tiamat because once you fully build Sania, she's actually atrocious in all game modes, especially PvP. And the reason she's so good in PvP is because of her passive. And the great thing about her passive is if you get hit with like Kraken, when she unthaws and it passes her turn because her turn is just the unthaw, she's going to use her passive and heal 2 people and cleanse. She just has that permanent passive that's absolutely brutal, especially if you combine it with Gigabyte. If you level up her skill 1, she gets a bazillion turn meter every time she attacks, and you pair that with Gigabyte to just start lapping turns, and her heals are just, I can't stress how good these passive heals are. And the thing with Sania is she's the best PvP healer. I had to fight over her. My last day of PvP, not a single person left her not being in the first 3 picks. She's just that good. There was a lot of cases where it was just like I only had my Sania left and they had like a Rosa and something else, and I was still able to win the game multiple times. She's absolutely brutal. Now, I will say her skill 3 is a mandatory fully upgrade, and then skill 2 upgraded to how much you need the heals at that time, and then skill 1 is just as much as you want. And, she's definitely meta defining, but, it's just like I don't really think that you should go 555 on her. Now, I did in the final test because I was focusing on PvP, but like in a general like launch account, I do think you take your time, and like yeah, she's one of those priority units to 555, but I would rather just 115 her and just have her as a really good healer. But she's basically a tank. Max dupe her in RTA is going to be absolutely atrocious, especially since you can't really rely on CC. You have to just damage kill her, and the problem with that is she's a giant damage sponge. So yeah, Good luck with that. Meta defining for sure, and great in PV, because she's great in PvE as well, especially with that cleanse. Now we've been talking about some meta units and meta defining units, so let's go back to talking about bad units, which Red Andrew might honestly be the worst unit in the game. So let's just put him in the duds for now. Get him out of here. Now, a unit that is not a dud that I think is going to be really strong to build later in the game, not at the beginning, is Fangus. I'm going to put him in the worth investing category at the bottom. Now, if you get Dark Sania and you commit to Dark Sania plus Fangus in the late game is going to be absolutely brutal. The problem with Dot is that not everything in PvE can be affected with Dot, and Dot is just not a really great strategy in PvP. So I don't think they can ever say like Dot units can be truly like meta defining our meta, but they can clear some of the Inferno content the best. And, that makes it like a little bit weird. Now, Fangus does require significant lattice upgrades to be really effective. I would say he needs his skill 3 upgraded to 3 for that 100% proc rate. Preferably all the way, but, I'm going to say minimums. And then his skill 1 and skill 2 need to be upgraded all the way to make those follow-up attacks really proc the way they need to. And, he's sort of a sub DPS, but the problem is, he applies speed down, and, we have Marvell for that. And Marvell is, like, the most used character, so, like, why would we use this Dot unit that does the same thing as Marvell, but worse? So that's kind of where he is, but I do think that if Marvell gets significantly nerfed, that is a chance for Fangus to possibly shine more in PvE content, but only time will tell on that. So right now, worth investing if you want to go that Dot route, but otherwise, he's not the best. Now let's talk about another meta unit for a second, and let's go with Valerian, who really shines later in the game in PvE and PvP content. I am going to put her at the bottom of meta for now, but I definitely think that she is a really strong unit and everyone should build her, because she's one of those characters that feels a little mid if you first use her without knowing what she does with her later lattices, which is her skill 3 fully upgraded. It just starts the battle with her doing Hazy Dream, which gives her immunity to crowd control effects, which if you've done early game PvP, you know that crowd control is everywhere, and it really just makes her go from like a mid unit to an amazing unit. And because of that invulnerability she gives on her skill 2, she's giving these shields, she's giving buffs, she's going to be one of the best PvE healers for the much harder content, especially in Doki Doki. In Doki Doki, you sort of know where the AI is going to attack you, and you can place that invulnerability on the unit that's about to get dunked on by the 5 Inferno units that lay down the noise. And the good thing is that the AI is actually pretty good at figuring out who is going to get dogpiled. So, I think Valerian is an amazing choice for Inferno farming, really hard content pushing. She gives that shield, she gives heal over time. I just can't stress that she's going to be one of like my most important units to upgrade once I hit level 35 on the skill 3. Now skill 2, you can upgrade it, but I'm leaving her at 115 for the very beginning of the game. And then later on, maybe in a month or so after I get all the SRs I really need built, then I'm going to upgrade her skill 2, just so the cooldown goes down by 1. And, the more invulnerability I can use, the better. And not only is she great in PvE, but, PvP, definitely going to be worth having. So that's my thoughts on Valerian. Now, the next unit we're talking about is going to be a rare, which is Cachi. Now, Cachi I'm putting in C tier above Asshu for now, and that's because of the skill 2. Now, don't invest anything in the Cachi. I don't think it's worth it. If you look at that skill 3, it looks pretty decent if you level it up. Like, this is one of those characters that if you level up, you're going to think is like actually viable, but I believe that's bait. What you use Cachi for is abusing that skill 2, which gives someone a 100% turn meter boost. It gives them attack up, and it reduces cooldown, which is, it's insane for a skill 2, especially for a rare unit. Basically, the point of Cachi is to have a cheese unit to try to do speed clears. That's like the only real idea I can think of with Cachi, because you don't want to be wasting those rare lattices on this, because you're going to be wanting to save those up for golden lattices for the currency you get them with, as well as other just general things you would rather get. Like, I believe the summon shop is another place where you get them, and you're going to want to save your summon currency for different things to exchange and not these lattices. I'm really going to stress that you shouldn't build up a lot of rare units. The only one I think is even worth it is number 41, and that's just because of how rare these lattices are in this game. But I do think, Cachi is going to have uses in cheese comps. Now, the next character I want to talk about is the sort of SR equivalent to Lily, which is Kazuyo. And she is absolutely like a weird spot, I would say, in this game. I'm going to say that like she's worth investing and also like not worth investing. It's like in this really weird like thing. I'm going to put her at the top of C for now, but she might be the bottom of B. And that's because she's one of those only characters that can give everyone speed up. Lily can do that, Tsuki can do that. And the thing is she also reduces cooldown, and her skill 2 has a dispel in it, which is going to be really important because she's red and it's going to work on Terramatan. And also it increases like the skill cooldown of the enemies by, it has a 50% chance of doing what Lily does. So like she is sort of like that SR version of Lily. The only problem is there's like multiple SSRs that do it better, and I think she's more like going to be used for comps that need like a cheese cooldown reduction plan. The speed increase is really nice. It's just like really hard because like based on your account, she might actually be worth investing. I'm actually just thinking about it. I'm going to move her to the top of B tier. She's going to be really nice on those cheese teams where you can do some wombo combo with cooldown reduction. There's just like a lot of ideas you can use, but the thing is there's a character that can do whatever her kit does, just better. And the thing with that is that she has 2 really strong skills that are done better by others, but like if you need both of those skills in a single character, she's worth having on your account for sure. So like, is she worth investing? Yeah, but there's just people who do what she does better. But the thing is I always want to have speed up on my team, especially in PvE. So I may be using her. I just like, only time is going to tell whether or not, right? And on the lattices for her, I do think she needs 2 lattices on her skill 3 just to increase all those goodies. I don't think she needs it all the way up for that skill cooldown reduction, but it is really nice because it does give the cooldown reduction. It's just like her kit is like so like, I believe that you're going to have to be the one to figure out how many lattices you can really throw to her, because no matter what, it's going to make her a lot better. And there are a few lattices that are like sort of mid, like just a little bit increase of effect accuracy. So you do have to commit to whatever is the next like boiling point for her. So like, you got to be cautious. She's worth having, but there are, it's just hard to say because there are things that do her job better. Now, another character that is worth investing into, but like I just don't think she's worth it at the beginning, and is Chiaki the Echo, which definitely worth investing. I'm gonna say is above Kazuyo, but the thing is that her ultimate needs to be fully upgraded to get that attack up and just giving people Ave Maria all the time. She's going to need to have skill 2 at 3, so her passive is giving Ave Maria, and she's going to need to have her skill 2 upgraded all the time so everyone can get affected in PvP, because I can't even remember how many times where she does the skill. It targets 2 characters, and if it's a 4-man team, one person's going to be left out, and she doesn't target my DPS, which, I would like my DPS to have an attack up, please. So, like, she needs significant upgrades, and even then, she's only boosting at a 20% with that fully upgraded ultimate skill 3, and number 41 kind of does it better. So like, it's kind of scary because like, yeah, she does have a lot of practical uses, but at the beginning of the game in the first month, especially with a Lightspender free to play, you're just not going to have the lattices to really have her potential, and she just requires too many lattices to really have her kit be functional. So I do think that people who have like creator accounts that have these fully latticed characters are going to value her much better than other characters. But if you are playing the actual game, she's not going to be latticed. She's going to feel mid. I highly recommend having like Lily, Tsuki, number 41. Even I would say Kazuyo is probably going to be better at the beginning of the game than her, just because there are other units that give that attack up. So putting her in worth investing, but I don't think she's going to be meta, at least until like a month in, when people start having purple lattices to start spending on other units. Now, another unit that I believe is worth investing into later in the game, and not really at the beginning, is Dorothy the Wisher. Now, I will say that I think Dorothy the Wisher is going to be better than Chiaki in a lot of cases, but I'm going to put her here for now because she does do that cooldown reduction. She does the thing that Cachi does where she pushes a character up, and her ultimate does give that crit rate up and life leech, plus it purifies debuffs. So she does a lot in her kit, a lot of utility, but the problem with that kit is that, like, it's just like there's other characters that do these things. Crit rate is a weird thing because Gray and Rosa are super meta units that, you already have a unit giving that crit rate buff. And the problem with her crit rate buff is that she can't keep it up super consistently because the cooldown on it after maxed out is 4. It starts out at 5, which is just like, it's too long of a cooldown if the fight is going to last for more than 2 or 3 turns. And, I just like, she's great utility. There's a lot of ways to abuse her kit, but, there's not enough lattices at the beginning. I'm not going to stress this enough. So, like, she's not a priority, and she's going to be a very niche unit. Now, she does have, like, obviously practical applications in PvP, and she's definitely going to be part of those cheese comps, but, cheesing is not, like, the best way to go about this game, except, like, on those in-game spots where it's just like, I have to figure out a solution to this that isn't just like a good team. So worth investing, not the best. Speaking of lattices being really hard at the beginning of the game, I think we need to talk about Freya. And I'm going to put Freya at the bottom of the meta. Now, she might need to be moved up a little bit more, but I think she is a meta unit that was pretty misunderstood. A lot of people thought they didn't need to pull her, and I'm going to talk about why she's so great in the first month. And that is because her cooldown isn't tied to like lattices, For example, Heinrich, his skill 3 has like just like way too long of a cooldown. He needs to have that skill 3 upgraded. Freya's ultimate, good to go at the beginning. Yeah, she gets a tiny bit better with lattices, but she's just like one of those characters where her kit's just great at the beginning. So yeah, has really good skill 2. She can purify, gives defense up, gives attack up, gives her nightmare, which makes you deal more damage and gives you that life leech, as well as her passive effect, which basically is If you do a buff, the turn meter goes up for all your characters. If there's a debuff on a character, it goes down for characters. And you can really abuse this in PvP as well as in PvE. For example, in a lot of the really, really hard in-game pushes in the PvE content in Anti-Sync Echoes, I was able to use Freya, Marvell, and Kraken to really push that turn meter. Now, Freya is going to be bad with characters who can't apply buffs and debuffs. For example, she's not like the best with like a DPS like Borgne, but like if you're using like Heinrich, for example, if you're using Rosa, for example, you can really see how much extra push you're going to get. So as like a fifth character, I do think she's really nice to have at the beginning of the game, just because don't need a lot of investment and can really swing the tides of the battle, and she can make you do more damage with Nightmare. She just has so many utilities. I don't think there's any reason not to have her on your account, especially since we get so many pulls at the beginning of the game. Now, the next unit we're going to talk about in this video is going to be Lian, who I am going to rate above Gray, and I think is a must build on every single account. Now, her skill 3 is one of the best PvE moves in the game, which reduces our steal's turn meter by 30%, as well as if you pair her with the shell that does 2 turns of lots of attack plus life leech, she essentially is going to have life leech on every single turn. Not only that, it's just she's so good in PvE. You will probably feel a moment of getting bricked in certain aspects of in-game without her, and she is definitely competent in PvP. People say she's not good, and that's just not true. I was seeing all the top players use her. She's just a character you want on your account. She is the red cleave. Now, she's not going to be as good as single target damage as someone like Khloros, and she doesn't have the shield to go with the DPS like Helkid, but, that's fine, we love our red cleave units. Speaking of cleave, let's talk about arguably one of the best cleave units in the game, which is Rilmocha, which I'm going to put above Tsuki, even though, Tsuki has really specific they fit different niches, but in terms of PvE content, Mocha is going to be that best green DPS for Doki Doki. She's going to just be the best cleave green unit. You have to max out her skill 3 for full potential, just like Lian needs her skill 3 maxed out. But, she's really going to come in clutch, and she has that heal on the skill 2, which is going to help in PvP. Now, she is really fragile, and I can't say she's meta-defining because she's really easy to burst down, and she doesn't have that good of survivability in her kit, but, she just has an amazing ultimate, and it pairs well with criticals. Just like if Borgne was able to crit, Borgne would definitely be a meta unit, in my opinion, because, Mocha is going to pair with Gray, Mocha is going to pair with Rosa, and just Beyontin and all these other characters to really capitalize on how much damage she can truly do. Now, moving on, I did mention Helkid with Lian, and I'm going to say Helkid is a meta-defining unit. Now, he isn't the top of the meta-defining unit because he did get nerfed before the final test, which did make his Shroud Barrier a little bit less potent. But even though it isn't as good as it used to be, if you're able to add onto the Shroud Barrier about 2 turns in PvP, that just means like the other team is going to lose probably no matter what, because they can't debuff you with the shield going on. And in-game PvE, that shield is definitely going to be invaluable. Now, I do think he doesn't do enough damage to really warrant being like the top of the meta defining, and his shield is not so huge at the moment that it's going to be absolutely unbeatable, because it did get nerfed. So at that point, he's meta defining, but it's just not overpowered enough as it used to be. And talking about another meta defining unit, we're going to go to Rahu here. And on Rahu, it's really hard for me to say where he's going to be exactly. Like, I do think he is better than Heinrich, but I do think Heinrich has more purposes in PvE, specifically farming those Inferno modules. But Rahu, make no mistake, he's going to be in that super end game where you're trying to beat Ember Trek. I think the farthest people got in Ember Trek did have Lian Rahu as the sort of DPS bruisers on the account, because Rahu scales off defense. He gives everyone a lot of survivability, as well as has one of the best follow-up attacks and uniques with Wrath. Now, I do believe, I mean, I did see him a lot in PvP at the top of the end game, but the problem with him is he doesn't really start to stand out until end game. So, although I am saying he's meta defining, he's one of those characters you want to keep on the back burner during week 1 and week 2, and then at week 3 he's going to thrive and everyone's going to realize how tier 0 he is. Moving on, a character that used to be tier 0 in my book, but got nerfed before the final test, is Veronika. I'm going to put her at the bottom of the somewhat to invest in. Like, if you do have extra gold lattices, which I don't think anyone's going to have any extra gold lattices to spare, and that is because her steal, she used to be able to steal a buff off the enemy, which was really funny to do on a Massiah, but now it's not guaranteed to do that. And I think just from her nerfs, even though they weren't like super major nerfs, it was enough to make it so I don't really want to invest into her, unfortunately. RIP, because I do really love like her character design, so it's unfortunate about that. She might even be C tier in my book. Actually, I am going to put her in C tier, unfortunately. So sad. Now, a character that's definitely not C tier is Kloss. I do think Kloss is an amazing unit. I think I'm going to put her here in the meta units, and that is because she has one of the best unique debuffs in the game, which is basically like they take more damage. And, she has that turn meter steal, which she distributes it between all of your allies evenly. And we know that turn meter reduction is amazing in this game. We know debuffs are amazing in this game, and she's going to be a part of a lot of speed clears. She's going to make a lot of PvE content really easy. She's going to be really good in PvP, but she's not going to be that best in slot for what she does in a lot of PvP content. And there is PvE content that she does not work in, and unfortunately she is going to be a dud in anything where her kit doesn't work. So definitely the best of the debuffers, but debuffers don't work in all content, so I can't say she's meta defining, but she definitely is meta. Now, going on, let's go to Beyontin, who is definitely a meta character. I'm going to put her below Tsuki for now, even though she might be better than Tsuki without any lattices, just because she is the only character to give crit damage boost and attack boost. And if you pair this with a character like Victor and Lily, you can pretty much decimate anything, and is going to be part of those speed clears. Now, she has a lot of utility with her kit with damage reduction and also a revive, but those are really good things in PvP, and they're super situational in PvE. She's going to have a lot of places, a lot of this game. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a heal, and she doesn't increase speed that well. So because of those, I can't say she's meta defining, but make no mistake, she is a powerhouse and will make your characters do tons of damage. Now, another character I want to talk about is Lingluo, and I think Lingluo is meta, but I'm going to put her at the bottom, which, that might seem a little sus for now. But the reason why I think she is a little bit lower than where she was is because Lingluo is a character that, she gives that immunity. She is a healer, but I don't really want to put lattices into her. And, I think Sania is a better healer in terms of PvP just because she can heal even if she gets CC'd. Lingluo needs to act first to be able to do anything. Valerian, if you max out her skill 3, is not going to get CC'd no matter what. So Lingluo has, good things going in her kit. Yeah, she's a great PvE healer, but I don't think she's the number one healer in any slot. I think she's just, second best in both PvE and PvP, which is a little unfortunate, but she's going to be the best in slot healer for Aurora, which is important, but I don't think she's going to be the absolute be all healer. Now, some people will disagree with that, and that's totally fine. Your opinion is totally valid. Now, let us talk about Doki Doki. Now, Doki Doki is a weird character. I'm going to say she is, she's worth investing into later, but she did get nerfed before the final test. It's really hard for me to say where she is. I'm going to put her at the top of B tier, but I don't think she's going to be that meta, because if I'm going to be investing lattices into a character that fits her profile, it's going to be Lily or Suki for sure, or even Beyontin. The problem with Doki Doki is that she's one of those characters that ramped up after the turns, and in the first month and a half, games are going to be decided very quickly. Everyone's going to try to speed clear. Where Doki Doki is going to shine is on those very long 15-minute battles where her buffs that can't be dispelled are going to be able to stack. And unfortunately, I just don't see a lot of uses for her besides like Infinity Train. And like, I would rather just use another unit than level up Doki Doki for that specific event. And another unit that would be great if we just had more lattices is Dark Sania. Now, Dark Sania is weird because she's not the best at PvP. She's really bad in a lot of PvE situations, but in that Inferno push at the very beginning, the Dot team is one of the best, and she's going to need lattice requirements for that. So if you do want to use some lattices to really make that very in-game PvE a breeze, I would definitely recommend leveling her. But the problem is Dot does not work on a lot of these in-game things, and when it does, she's amazing, but she's not she's not a great all-around unit. She's just very good at those super specific things, but when she does work, she is the best. And she also requires Fangus to be leveled up as well, and having to use that much resources in the first 2 weeks is a little bit iffy. So if you're only worrying about PvE farming at the beginning of the game, she's definitely going to feel like an S tier character for you, but for most people on their accounts, I'm going to say she's top of the B tier. Now, going on with talking about B tier, let's talk about Massiah, who I'm actually going to put him at the bottom of a meta unit, which is going to seem weird because a lot of people have been glazing Massiah a ton. But the problem with Massiah is he is an amazing cleave unit, but at the beginning of this game and a lot of these in-game PvE content, you really want to be taking advantage of that RGB situation where a DPS like Rosa is just going to do so much more damage against Aurora. Mocha is going to do so much more damage against Doki. Khloros and Lian is just going to be so much better against Terror. It's just like I would rather focus at these beginning months on getting my RGB cleaves better and then having Massiah built up. Now, Massiah is a great unit, and you can use a lot of different things to make him absolutely busted. For example, cooldown reduction with him on units that do that really help because he gets invulnerability when he uses his skill 3. So if you're able to make it so he can do a infinite loop, do it 2 or 3 times in a row, and he's just invulnerable for 3 turns, that can really just win you the match if they can't do anything about your Massiah. Now, this is easily beatable. Like, a lot of people are going to be having leveled up Heinrichs on their account, so that's going to get around the invulnerability. You can steal the invulnerability with Veronika, even though that's not a super guarantee anymore. But people are going to have Dispellers on their account, especially after week 2 once people built up Viper. So he's going to fall off, and I would just rather have an RGB cleave. But, if you can build 4 cleave units, I would have him as my 4th one for sure. Moving on, let's talk about another healer, which is Mia. Mia has like one of the best skill 3 ultimates in the game, but even though it's so good, I don't really think her Dispel is that great, and I don't think her basic skill 1 attack is as good as a lot of the other healers. And for this instance, I'm going to put her at the bottom of the somewhat invest. I actually think she might just be the top of C tier, because, I don't really want to invest into her, and I do think that Chiaki is a better red healer than her. And if you don't know what Chiaki does, I'm going to put her at the bottom of somewhat invested because I don't think she's the best PvE healer. I think the best PvE healer is going to be Valerian. I think the best PvP healer is going to be Sania. And I think Lingluo is going to cover up all the other bases. I think those are the 3 healers you want on your account. But Chiaki does have this unique that makes it so if anyone gets hit with a stack of her unique, they take 35% less damage, which that's going to come in clutch in a lot of certain situations. She is a red healer, so she is going to get that added bonus against green teams. So I can see her coming up in certain in-game content, but like she is a very specific unit. But the thing is like I just can't put any healer as like a bad unit in my opinion. I did put Mia down a little bit low, but that's just because she doesn't have heal all the time. She has one really good heal move and that's it. So yeah, Chiaki, somewhat worth investing, but there's just so many more units that I think is worth investing before her, especially since there's other healers that you're going to want on your account. Now, speaking of healers, I am going to say the worst healer in the game is going to be Dorothy. I think she shines in the first 2 shell bosses, and then after that, it's like it's time to put her in the toy chest and never take her out. She scales off attack, which is like really weird. I don't know. I really didn't find her good, but I did see a lot of people say that she's one of the best SR units. I didn't see it. My friends didn't see it. I'm going to put her as a dud. And speaking of duds, I'm just going to put Sybil there right now too. And, she's just a bad rare unit. And speaking of duds, here's Cachi the Guard. I'm going to probably put him at the top of the duds just because he does have a lot of defensive capabilities, but the problem is in PvE, you want to defeat your enemy. You don't want to survive your enemy. And because of that, I think he might have a place in PvP stall teams later on, but it's just not worth the investment of that character. And then another rare that is a dud is this guy. I read his kit one time and I was like, this might be good against like one shell boss at the very beginning, but at that point it's just easier to overpower the enemy, not really worrying about anything. For dispellers, Obel has a stun, but I'm going to actually put him below these units, which might seem really low for Obel because he does have that D-spell on his skill 2, which does apply a stun. Unfortunately for Aurora, I think Viper is a better pick in both the dot teams as well as just any overall composition if you need a Dispeller against a red unit, because, Obel doesn't really work with continuous farming. He's not going to use his D-spell as his first attack, which is his best attack. Now, he's going to be decent in PvP. He's definitely a good unit to have, but he has very niche roles, and because of that, I don't think he's worth investing at the beginning. I think you are always going to want Kraken, unless if Kraken gets completely nerfed in the balance patch, which is a possibility because Kraken was amazing. Now, moving on, let's go to Silence. Now, I'm going to put Silence at the top of C tier. And the reason I put Silence in the top of C tier is because, yeah, the Aqua Shield is really great, and Forgetfulness is a very niche move that makes it so that your enemies cannot activate their passives, which, it's going to come up, especially against enemies like Rosa, Rahu. There is a place for Silence, but the problem is that she's just not good enough to really warrant putting in these golden lattices at the beginning. So she's like one of those back burner units that may come up in a couple of months, but even Giga Whales aren't going to have enough lattices to really utilize her. So if you're looking at her kit fully maxed out, yeah, it is pretty decent, but we have to be realistic here. No one's going to put lattices in Silence unless if she's your favorite waifu. Then at all means, but that's not really a practical sense. Now, let's go to Ziada, which I'm also going to put Ziada in C tier, which is going to upset a lot of people because a lot of people were really enjoying her in the beta, but I just don't think she's as good as the other blue DPSs. But she needs sort of like a wind up because of how her Ghost Flames attack worked, and a lot of people were telling me she's the truth, and I just didn't really see it. Now I could see it in a mode like Infinity Train, but the thing is like I don't want to build up a DPS just because they're good for a event that happens one time, right? So C tier for me for now, but if we do somehow get a lot more lattices later on, I do see her leveling up for her niche roles. Speaking of another C tier character, I'm going to talk about Turndot. And Turndot I am going to put below Obel just because she doesn't have that CC like Obel does with the stun. What Turndot has is a buff with her ultimate that without lattices has a way too long of a cooldown time, and then she has D spells which can be worked for Terror Inferno, but unfortunately she's not going to use those D spells at the beginning with an auto, so unfortunately you are going to have to manual Terramaton if you use her, as well as like you just really want to get a Heinrich on your account so you don't have to use her. She's not as good as Viper at that D-spell role. Her buffs are done better by other characters. She's just a really niche thing if you need that D-spell and Terror. And it's a little unfortunate because I do like her character model. So the other characters like Yang, for instance, and the Rens, and all the other characters, I'm going to put in just D tier. I'm not going to really label them out. They are just not the best units. And the blue guy, I'm going to put him in C tier. I think he is good, but, he's not like... I just don't warrant putting the resources into him, even though he does have like a sort of cool, unique kit. And I'm not going to place Hoyon on the tier list because we don't really know what she's going to be looking like once launch happens, since they did rework her and took her out during the final test. Now, Hoyon might become the best single target DPS in the game, but the problem with that is like that's not going to be great in PvE content, but in PvP content, she's going to be absolutely meta defining. But because she's not going to have that spot in PvE, I don't think she really warrants anything. So this is how the tier list turned out. Let me know what you feel. I'm going to post the full picture of it on my Discord for anyone to see, and I'm totally okay answering any questions you have about the tier list, as well as feel free to leave a comment on why you don't agree with anything, and I'll be sure to try to answer you with why I think the way I do and how I can respect your opinion as well. So yeah, I hope this tier list was helpful. True Evil over and out.